Welcome to Product Mastery Now. This is where we simplify the 7 knowledge areas for product mastery. These are the product management concepts that help you accelerate your career. They do that by increasing your influence and really contributing to you creating products that your customers will love. To find out about all 7, go to productmasterynow.com. I'm Chad McAllister, a product management professor, practitioner, and your host. And today our topic is strategy. And what I expect our guest would argue is also the most important of the 7 knowledge areas. There is one called strategy for product mastery. And we all know about strategy. We hear about how important it is. It gets talked about enough, but do we actually know how strategy is developed? That's seldomly talked about. And consequently, not many people can properly develop a strategy. That also means few people can evaluate one. And since product innovation, product managers, our work is supposed to be aligned with strategy, then we should know about how strategy is actually developed and how to evaluate a strategy as well. And by the end of this episode, that will be true for you. You will be on your way to being accomplished at that. Joining us is a product management and strategy master, Andreas Maihoefer. He has guided executives in developing organizational strategy and led product organizations in developing product strategy. He also teaches at the University of Pittsburgh and previously at Carnegie Mellon. We'll talk more in a moment how we met, but he knows an awful lot about the strategy and tools that we can learn to develop strategies ourselves. If you want to find written details of what we talk about, there's a full article that we put together for you. That resource is at productmasterynow.com/497. Andreas, thanks for joining us.
I'm so glad to be here, Chad. Thank you for inviting me.
Sorry, I'm getting over this cold still and just coughing a little bit. So I want to go back to what you were doing sometime in your life. I don't know when this was, when you first got into thinking about strategy and that you need to figure something out about how to come up with a strategy.
Yeah, I thought about that question a little bit, and I guess I was predisposed to working with strategy when I joined the military right out of high school. And spent quite a number of years as officer in the Army. And quite naturally, strategy is part of military. And when I left the military, it felt quite natural to me to then take this strategy foundation from the military and also stay in the métier, if you will, and apply it to the business world. And yeah, so if I look back at my civilian career, then it really started out with marketing strategy. So a functional strategy, I was responsible for marketing product line of medical products to Middle East and Africa. And so I had to develop strategy, a go-to-market strategy for these products. And then I moved up the ladder, if you will, or graduated to the next level of strategy and became a product planner. That was actually my title. And my responsibility at that point was to plan a portfolio of products in a certain category. And that also involved helping to develop products, but then also to decide which products should be next on our time horizon. And so that was one level up. And then another step up to the corporate level, I was strategic marketing manager and product development director. And at that point, I was then responsible to contribute to corporate strategy and business level strategy. So that's, I guess, a somewhat natural career path if you stay in that same category. And then I left the corporate world and now I consult and teach strategy and product management. So that's the circle of my life a little bit up to this point.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, in the strategy knowledge area, there is this pyramid notion of a strategy, right? From the top-down corporate level down to all the functions and ultimately product innovation strategy. And so it sounds like you progressed that pyramid throughout your career. So love that.
For sure.
I first became aware of your depth in strategy. I think it was a 2019 conference we were together at,
Mm,
and you were doing a session, and our friend Mark Atkins, who we both know well and respect, grabbed me and said, "Hey, Andreas really knows this stuff. You should come sit in on his session." And I thought, well, I've been through a couple strategy things. I know the body of knowledge area.
mhm,
And then when I was in a startup, the VC who led the investing, she taught all of us and says, I teach everyone I invest in how to develop a strategy. And that was actually really eye-opening. That was my first
mhm.
time going, oh, here's some of the tools. And this is really about creating a competitive advantage in the marketplace and not just doing a better job serving customers, but really being different in some way. And that was really eye-opening. And I sat in a session thinking like, it'll just be interesting for me to see how he presents, and that would be educational. Boy, did I learn a lot. It was just great. And so I've had you do a couple things for me since then on strategy, and we're going to dive into that. By no means covering everything, but I know you break up your framework into internal analysis tools and external tools. And today I asked you to take us through just a quick introduction to those internal tools, at least
Mm.
enough so people will know, oh, I know these tools exist now and I can go look up more about them if I want to apply them. So that's what we're going to try to get done in our time together. For people that want to see this, I believe you have some slides you're going to share with us. And you can, if you're just listening and you want to see the slide material as well from Andreas, you'll find that on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search Product Mastery Now for that. So your first one is called House of Strategy Framework. You want to take us through that?
Yeah, sure. But actually, before I get into that, a general comment about tools and how I use tools or what my ideal tools are. And there are thousands of different tools for product management and strategy and everything else under the sun. But when I find a tool, there are a couple of things that I think are important for me to actually use it. One, and they need to serve different purposes. The first and maybe the most critical purpose that a tool serves for me is that it needs to help me plan and think about issues,
Okay.
items, problems, right? So it's a thinking tool and a planning tool. The next thing is it should be a collaborative tool. You can come up with wonderful ideas and develop them on your own. But in the end, sticking a couple of bright minds together, that creates true innovation. And so if a tool helps me to collaborate with others, something we can work on together in a tool, that is for me a big plus. The third criteria that I look at is, does this tool help me to communicate and ideally visualize concepts, right? So I come up with a wonderful idea, but now I cannot tell the story. If this tool helps me to visualize and communicate that story, that's another plus for me. And the last one I want to mention is, if it's a planning tool, on the other side, it should also be a monitoring tool or an execution tool, right? So if I planned it and I have bullet points in it, can I come back to it and see how did we progress through the bullet points? And so those are, for me at least, four really critical items about a tool. And something else that I tell people is, never use just one tool for one problem that you're facing. Use different tools so that you
Mm-hmm.
get different perspectives and highlight the problem from different sides. So that's a little bit of background about tools. Sorry for
That's great.
belaboring that.
Actually, those
Now,
are some good tips for selecting
yeah,
tools.
yeah. So let me get back to the house of strategy. And really, in my mind, house of strategy, that concept fulfills all those criteria.
Hmm.
And even if you just say the name, you probably have an image in mind, right? House of strategy, you see a house, now it's up to your mind to populate the house. Let me paint my picture for you a little bit. And here I would like to share my screen. So let me just,
Sure.
so house of strategy, you all view a house, the house has a roof. And this roof is formed, again, in my mind, by mission, vision, and values. So they form the roof under which everything else sits. So at the top, We have mission, vision, and values. And the mission tells us, why are we here? What is our reason for being? The vision is, where do we want to go in the future? And the values are, how do we want to behave as an organization? So if this is the roof, then the next level down would probably be the attic. And if we talk attic, then I would position the corporate strategy in the attic. So the corporate strategy is how we achieve, as a corporation, the mission, vision, and values that we set for ourselves. And now we go a floor down, and that's where the people actually live. And so the first level under the attic is what I call the business unit strategy. And since we're talking about corporations, there may be different business units, and consequently, we may have different business unit strategies. Mind you, they all have to feed into the corporate strategy, and they all have to fulfill the mission, the vision. We can go a couple more floors down, and that's where we meet our neighbors, the functional and the operational strategies. And so, for example, we see the marketing strategy, the HR strategy, the resourcing strategy, and so on and so forth. And each business unit may have different functional strategies to fulfill their individual purpose. Altogether, there needs to be feedback, right? So there needs to be an elevator, or at least a staircase where the executives from the top can walk down and see what the functional strategy is for finance in the business unit. Or the finance representative of business unit B can climb up the stair or take the elevator and meet with the CFO of the corporation to discuss finance strategy. And so I hope this image creates in you an idea how it all fits together, but then also the idea that it has to fit together, right? So you're not building a shed that's not under the roof, right? You stay under the roof of the organization to go on with this.
I love the word picture.
Yeah.
I can see the visual, right? Because we have this on video, but as you just described the word picture, I love that, and including the elevator staircase that ties it together.
Yeah, yeah. So what else can I tell you about the House of Strategy?
So I think the most important thing here is the relationship between whatever your job is, there is a strategy oriented towards that role that is aligned throughout the organization, ultimately to the overall organization's strategy, what the strategic objectives at that time that the organization is trying to accomplish, and how your work is aligned to that. And the thing that I know we could spend so much time on any one of these details, what surprises me is how often individuals, including product managers, are not aware of the overall corporate strategy. And then how do you know if your work is aligned to those objectives well or not, right? There might be OKRs, other things that you're doing, but we need to have that big picture in mind for sure.
Yeah, I do a little exercise when I teach this to professionals or even my students is I ask them, without looking it up online, write down your mission statement, your corporate mission statement, or your company or your business unit mission statement. And I would say the majority of them cannot reiterate the mission statement or the strategy or the vision, which I think is a problem. But it gets back to the point that you just mentioned. You need to be aware what the goal is. Otherwise, how do you know how to get there?
Right. Good. I like this. Thank you. Okay. So that's just the kind of the overall framework, this house of strategy. And then I know you move into another one called defining the core.
Yeah, that's also a really interesting one. And it's a suspiciously simple question. What is our core? To ask the question in the company, and everybody will have a quick answer. But is that truly your core? And so I've been looking for tools that can help me get a little bit more crisp around this definition of core. And what I found is a concept from 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭, he used to be, maybe he still is, a consultant for Bain & Company. Does the company even still exist? I don't even know. Anyway, at that time, he wrote this article in the Harvard Business Review. And in it, he discusses how we are really not, we're just scratching the surface when we say, hey, what's our core? And the answer is, well, it's product XYZ. That's our core business. And so he proposes that there's many more dimensions or vectors that you need to get clarity around to define your core and describe your core. And so this question, what is our core, is really much more complicated because it should raise more questions that are critical. What is this at the right core to have, right? Are we in the right business? Do our customers care for this particular core that we focus on? Can we sustain this core? What vulnerabilities do we have just focusing on this particular core? And where do we go beyond this core? Do we want to branch out or not? And there are many more questions that this simple question, what is our core, should actually invoke in you. And so, yeah, I have another slide that I can share describing 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞's concept a little bit more. And starting with the core, typically companies will center or define the core around the three arrows that you see now, right? So we describe the product or the service that we deliver, and that's our core. Some companies expand it a little bit and say, hey, we also need to describe our customers, right? We don't build a product and don't know who to sell it to. So that's a second point that we need to be clear about as a company. Who are we serving? And then the more mature companies also say, hey, we need to define the specific needs within those customer segments that we fulfill with our products and our portfolio. And that's typically where companies stop. But Bain says you cannot stop there. You need to be more granular. And he offers 4 more dimensions, or he calls them vectors, to describe and define your core. And so we have channels, the geographies, vertical integration, and capabilities. And the most critical in my mind really is the capability vector. Because that, again, for me, is where true differentiation happens. Other companies can copy your products, right? Even if you have patents on it, a product can be copied in a relatively short amount of time. Even the customers can be siphoned off, right? So you may lose your customer segments. And other companies fulfill those same needs and in the same geographies and so on and so forth. But it is relatively more difficult to copy capabilities that an organization has. And I don't just mean having a lot of money in the bank. It's truly what are our employees good at, and what are our processes that we are good at. That will differentiate the company in a more sustainable way than just saying, hey, we have this product, it does have a patent, so nobody can copy it for a number of years. But there are always ways to get around a patent. So that's kind of the concept that 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 mentions. And he describes it that way because if you want to branch out, first you need to know where you stand today. And then you can branch out. And you can branch out along all of these vectors. And so the idea is, well, which one is the best vector to go after? Or should we address more vectors than just one, which in the end needs to happen, because if you just decide we go into a different geography, you need different channels, for example. So if you move it in one direction, other things will change. So it helps you to think about this and get clarity what the future direction could be. and what kind of cascading effect it has on the other 6 dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Absolutely.
going to
Okay,
stop
good.
here.
No, that's great. So, yeah, so more depth to what the core is that we need to understand beyond just our products, customer segments, and needs. And I think of it as usually when I'm talking about that, it's usually in the context of our capabilities.
Mm,
And especially in the time of economic downturns, we see organizations having more serious discussions about what to offshore, what to outsource, and the like. And sometimes there's confusion about, well, what's the core that we should keep, right? What's the thing that makes us unique in the marketplace? And without having a good handle on that, we can make poor decisions, not just to make that a stronger competitive advantage, but maybe seeing how organizations actually get rid of their core over time in an effort to reduce cost. And then there's nothing special about them anymore, and they get replaced in the marketplace.
right,
So,
right.
okay. So far we're getting a good handle around the organization a little bit. We started with this mission, vision, values to kind of set the big picture stage, a core understanding of what we're really about and where our strengths are, what employees are good at. Which tool do you want to share next?
Well, I have a couple. I have a big selection, of course.
I know.
Um, I think since we were talking about capabilities, maybe we talk about VRIO Analysis,
Okay.
because that I think is a concept or a tool that not too many people might be familiar with, and I think it's a quite valuable tool thinking process again that helps you understand the capabilities that differentiate you or can differentiate you. And so VRIO stands for valuable, rare, inimitable, and organizationally supported. And maybe again going back to a slide to visualize it for the audience. And so again, the question is, we all have certain capabilities that we are proud of, right, as individuals and as organizations. The question is, are they truly valuable to the organization? And so this VRIO analysis should help you get a better handle on that. And as I said, V stands for valuable, R for rare or rarity, I for inimitable.
And just to clarify that, because it's a word I can stumble over and I'm not sure I can actually say correctly, that you can't imitate it.
That is
Imitable?
correct.
Okay,
I do have a little definition just below.
good.
Yeah, I don't know why they called it inimitable and not just not imitatable or
You had a
non-imitatable.
vowel in there somewhere, a vowel for
Yeah,
it to,
yeah.
I guess, be pronounceable. Okay.
Anyway, so the concept here is that you might think a certain capability sets you apart in the market. And so the question you really need to ask yourself, how valuable is this capability in the eyes of the customer? Not just in our mind, but will customers value this particular capability or resource that we have as an organization? And the answer is yes or no, right? So it's one question and you answer yes or no. So let's say you say, hey, this is valuable. Our customers like our customer service, for example, right? That's a capability, organizing customer service to give customers a wonderful experience. And that may set you apart. But is it rare? Can somebody else deliver the same level of customer service that we deliver today? If they can, then at most you have a competitive parity, right? It doesn't set you apart anymore. It's nice to have because somebody else has it too. You need to add something to spicing up the dish a little bit. From there, you go to this infamous I, inimitability. How easy is it to copy this particular capability that you have, right? So rare is today, nobody else has it, only we or only a few others. How quickly could somebody who is not in this business copy this particular capability? That's the I part in the whole equation. And if it's really quickly to copy this, then you may have a competitive advantage, but only for a very short time, right? If it takes half a year to whip up a service, hire somebody, and do the same service for your company as it is for the primary contender in the market, at that point, again, you end up with parity. And up to that point, it's just a temporary state, so to speak.
Okay.
And the O then is organizational support. Are we even structured in the right way to make use of these capabilities to the fullest extent, right? Do we have the structure and the processes to exploit the capabilities and resources that we have here? So that's the VRIO analysis. And the way I like to approach it as a simple table and brainstorm the capabilities that you have as an organization or resources that you have as an organization. That would be the first column. And then you just go through the VRIO and say, yes, it delivers value. Yes, it's rare. Yes or no, it's not copyable. And we're set up to deliver on it. That gives you sustaining competitive advantage. And then any deviation from that steps you down in the competitive level, if you will. Does that make
Excellent.
sense?
Yeah, very useful, right? A lot of times I think we kid ourselves. Like these are things that we're really good at, and the things we're really good at are there's lots of other people that are really good at them too. So that does not create for a competitive advantage that is defensible or differentiable in the
For
marketplace.
sure.
And I know there's other tools out there that you also make good use of. You have previously told me about how you use the Boston Consulting Group's 2x2 matrix for the growth share matrix. And SWOT is probably what comes to a lot of people's mind when they think of strategy. That was the foundational tool that the VC founder shared with us and how she used it, which was actually quite good and very in-depth. But I know when you talk about it, you add ratings to your strengths and weaknesses to actually rate those in a fashion. When I talk about SWOT, I often add an extra T with groups for trends. And I want them to think about opportunities and threats should reflect growing or decreasing trends that are taking place in the business environment. And to make sure we do that, I like adding an extra T in there too. So though that's a really good collection of tools together, right? At least we've shared with the audience some tools that they can look into when it comes to developing strategy. And we'll probably get back together and talk again sometime about these things. As listeners know, we do like innovation quotes, and I asked you to bring us one. And I don't know if you were able to limit yourself to one or not.
So it was very difficult for me, as you saw when I responded to your email. But I think I'm going to go back to, I gave you two from Einstein and one from Eisenhower. And I'm paraphrasing Eisenhower now. And he says, or he said, plan is useless, but planning is indispensable. And I think that's a very pertinent quote for approaching strategy. You need to plan strategy, even if the next day the plan goes in the bin because some environmental factor changed and you have to address it in some form or fashion. But by planning, you prepare yourself, you create scenarios, you get ready for these changes that will definitely come to you, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe next month or in a half a year or so on.
Absolutely.
So planning is indispensable. The plan may be useless, but planning is indispensable.
Absolutely. It's such a great quote. And I've always found that to be true too. The planning is where the magic occurs and the real value is gained. And then you're able to adapt the plan as you need going forward because you have figured out some of the variables involved. So that's fantastic.
Exactly.
Very good. Well, as you said, these days you teach and help companies with things like product strategy and organizational strategy. How can people find out more about the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. I'll share my screen one last
Sure.
time because that might make it easier for your audience to get in touch with me. And there we go. So I have the two QR codes. One on the left side is for my company, and the one on the right side is my LinkedIn profile. And then on the bottom, I have my business email address. So use any of those, reach out to me via LinkedIn, via my website, the contact form, or just send me an email directly, and I'll be happy to get back to you.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. What is the name of the company?
It is 𝐿 Consulting. I was not very creative when I developed my domain name. So it's in the domain name and in the email address. 𝐿 Consulting.
𝐿 Consulting. Very good. That's excellent.
There we go.
And as we did mention when we started, we met at a conference. That's the PDMA conference, Product Development and Management Association conference. It is my favorite conference each year, and it's coming up in September, and would love for any listeners that would like to check it out to go do that and see if it's a good fit for you as well. It's September 14th to 17th, and you'll find information on it at PDMA's website. That's pdma.org. I've mentioned this before, but they are the oldest organization that has curated the body of knowledge for product managers and product innovators since 1976 now. So there's actually a great wealth of information about how we can do our jobs better. And that's where the 7 knowledge areas for product mastery come from. And if you do want to find out more about those knowledge areas as well, I provide training for that. I have a system called the Rapid Product Mastery Experience. It's available for online training or for groups that I facilitate in organizations. Get information on how that can help you really level up your career at productmasterynow.com/RPM. Andreas, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for telling us a little bit about some of these strategy tools and also the tips for how to select tools.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. This was a lot of fun, and I hope your audience finds a couple of nuggets, things that they can use in their jobs.
Absolutely. And I think we'll have to do a follow-up so we can cover a few more tools as well.
Sure. Endless.
That'd be fun. And listeners, thanks again. You'll find the article of everything that we discussed at productmasterynow.com/497. As always, keep innovating.
Thank you for listening to Product Mastery Now, where product leaders and managers gain product mastery through practical knowledge, influence, and confidence. By listening, you are becoming a product master, creating products customers love. Find additional resources at productmasterynow.com. Keep innovating.